Welcome back to another edition of Outside the Lab. I'm owner Grant Rembert. Couldn't be more excited to have our next guest on here, Ben Hall. He is the head baseball coach at North Carolina A&T, Division One program sitting in Greensboro, North Carolina. They are in the MEAC conference. He has done an unbelievable job in his short amount of time at North Carolina A&T. Just to give a little bit of background real quick, um, he was named interim head coach in 2014. And then, of course, after the first full season there, they went ahead and gave him the job, and he's had a ton of success since, unprecedented. But before we get into this, welcome on, Coach, and can't thank you enough for being on.
Thanks, Grant and Cameron, you too, and love getting on here, getting away from this whole uh, Corona thing a little bit to talk some ball, and especially some North Carolina baseball. I got some good North Carolina dudes on the call here. That's always good. I was on the
That's
phone
right,
earlier
man.
today with somebody from Florida, so I can rein it back in here into the state. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. We can't thank you enough, and I know you've probably done a lot of these because we really can't do anything else right now. I
no,
mean, it's a great time to reconnect with some old colleagues and some good friends, and pick your brain a little bit about what's going on.
right.
Uh, but first and foremost, let's just talk about the success you've had at North Carolina A&T in a very short amount of time. You're talking about turning the program around right away. I'm just going to run through a couple things here. Uh, First of all, you're one of the youngest Division One coaches in the nation. As you know, and I know that was the case whenever you first started. Um, North Carolina A&T, whenever you took over, really wasn't doing very well. And now, in 2017 and 2018, you had winning seasons. And I believe you've put together what? How many winning seasons in a row now?
That's be 19, three if you don't count 2020 would have been four. So
Yes.
four. I would say four in a row.
Yes. So it looks like you're combined 60 and 50 overall, and 2017, 2018 were the best win total percentages over a 2 year period in school history. Um, Unprecedented whenever it comes to improvements in those years. And 2018, you went to the regionals.
Yeah, yeah. It's just been a fun ride. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that those first 2 years were rough and tough. There were a lot of things that just weren't, when you get an inside look at the bones of your program, and you know that they're not healthy and in a good place. It takes a lot of work to get them right. But um, the thing I always maintained when I got here, and when I had the interim job, I made sure to impress upon the athletic director at the time, and Mr. Hilton, who's still here, is the school had everything we needed to be good. The program just needed to get its britches pulled up and in the right place. So you're talking about a largest HBCU in the country, down campus in Greensboro, beautiful campus, new buildings. It was growing even when I got here. The only thing that wasn't growing was baseball, and so I told them a lot of the things that a baseball coach can't fix was already in good shape here. Now you need a baseball coach to fix what he can fix, and that was all the things that are under our control, which is recruiting and off the field conduct and classroom attendance and the conduct and the work ethic of your coaching staff. That was something that before I got here was not good. And not to call anybody out, it just is what it is. Facts are facts. And so we were fortunate to make the right decisions in that first year, despite not winning, and get it pointed in the right direction to be able to make the appropriate changes, which were hire good people, recruit better players, establish some core beliefs and some things that you need to do better as a program within the group, the players, and then keep convincing them that they're good enough to win. And once we did that, then it kind of took off from there. And you're right. I mean, the last couple of years we've been really good. We were going to have a great year this year, and our recruiting is as hot as ever. We got a lot of good players coming, and obviously in the coming up, and we'll probably talk about it today. We're moving conferences, so at some point here in 2 years, the Big South. So there's just so much momentum right now. It's fun to think about.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into that. I mean, you guys are moving right into the Big South. I mean, it sounds like, you've hit on a lot of things. The location of North Carolina A&T, sitting in Greensboro, North Carolina. What a great location. I mean, baseball area, baseball heaven around there with UNCG right down the road. Obviously, Wake Forest, Elon, High Point, North Carolina. All these places are within a stone's throw. So it is a great baseball area. Gives you an opportunity to be around a lot of other really good programs as well. And then you talked about the campus a little bit. North Carolina A&T is a beautiful campus. So there were a lot of things there. So let's hit on before we get into the Big South. You hit on a little bit. You're talking about quality. You talk about core beliefs. You're talking about being truthful, facts, work ethic. All these things that we talk about at Athletes Lab. So what did it take? Obviously, really good leadership, but I know it was hiring the right people at first. But from there, I mean, what did it take to get it to where you want to be?
Yeah, in the end, it took committed people, both obviously with the people that work with me and our coaching staff, but in the end, we don't play the games either that win. So, you got to get players that have that it factor, some edge to what they do. You got to have hungry players. If basically what turned around our program were walk-ons and 25%ers, and I'll be the first to say that out there. We had the first 2 years I was here, we had some budget issues with our scholarship dollars, and they were spent in places that really inhibited what we could do. And we just made a commitment. We're like, we're going to spend our money on pitching, and we're going to go find hitters and position players that are in the state of North Carolina who have been passed over, who haven't, had the opportunities at other schools, and we're just going to work and develop them. And we had guys like Michael Johnson. Nort Davidson was a walk-on here, and he's been a Friday night Division I pitcher, after about the 5th week of his freshman year. So you start to see like that becomes kind of a culture of your program. You got a bunch of kids who maybe got overlooked or didn't quite get the opportunities they wanted coming out of high school. And for us to move ourselves up the line, it's going to take somebody that's not willing to accept, what people have laid out for them, and you're going to have to break some walls down. You're going to have to eliminate the glass ceiling. You're going to have to kind of break through some barriers if you want to become a good baseball program, because in the end, it's not set up for you. It's not laid out for you. And I think that's something that really hit home in 2018, or really 2017, with those kids that really were the ones that turned the program around. And we had kids on that program in 2017 that never swept a weekend in their whole careers. And we had our first sweep, and then we went to the conference tournament for the first time in 5 years. And then in 2018, we won the regular season for the first time, I think, ever, maybe in 10 years or something like that. But you got all these guys who in their freshman and sophomore years never won. They were so motivated to win beyond all belief. It's kind of like what you hear from Michael Jordan in this thing. Like, I'm here to win at all costs. They had that sense to them. And that's what changed our program. Because they could have easily just, said, yeah, we're enjoying playing ball and it's fun, we'll be okay. But there was some anger to what they did and how motivated they were to win. And that's what changed our program. They were tired of losing, and winning and losing is important. It is very important.
Absolutely. Sometimes that gets overlooked, but, parents and players out there listening to that message right there, I hope you rewind it and listen to it again, talking about work ethic, being committed, things that I'm writing down, talking about walk-ons, winning with walk-ons. Guys are 25%, guys that are getting passed over, looked over, whatever you want to say. But, baseball, and we talk about all the time, is a sport where if you put in the work, there will be a place for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It's not like some other sports. So that was an unbelievable message right there. I hope everybody listens long and hard to that. So tell us about the Big South. What's going on?
Yeah, it's just exciting. I mean, there there's obviously different layers for our university changing conferences. I mean, we were one of the founding members of the MEAC, and for all the time that we spent there as an athletic department of the university, obviously very important to where we are as a Division I institution. But on the other hand, you also see and recognize an amazing growth within our athletic department, even beyond our revenue sports. And as popular and as big time as football and track and basketball have been for our athletic department, the opportunities that this move provides baseball and softball and volleyball is just amazing. All assuming we can get to where we need to be. But it's just a big deal. I mean, I think it's a 12 spot jump in conference RPI for baseball off of last year. I think we were 30th in the nation last year in baseball and MEAC, and I think Big South was somewhere like 11 or 10 or 12, something like that. So it's exciting. It's obviously tough. There's going to be a lot to get done and continue to improve on, because as exciting as it is to move, you're also surrounded by a bunch of competitive people who want to go in and win right away and enjoy being the dominant team. And so while it's hard to do that in baseball year in and year out, but you want to give yourself the best chance to do that also. But there's just so many positives to it. Every game streamed on TV, on the internet through the Big South Network is huge. Just excited for the competition level, some of the things it's going to provide our players, a new platform. So
that's awesome, man. Now, let the listeners know out there who all is in the Big South Conference now, and just so they know how competitive the league is for baseball.
Yeah. So Campbell University, UNC Asheville, Radford, Winthrop University, Presbyterian, High Point University, USC Upstate. Your old stomping grounds.
That's right.
And a team that was really hot this year that Mike is kind of taken back over and done it. Is going to do a great job there. They're going to be really competitive. I mean, it's a competitive league. I mean, they won a national title. Back when Coastal was in it. That whether Coastal was leaving that year or not, it doesn't matter. They were a longtime Big South member, and they won a national championship. So the teams, the programs, the head coaches in that league all are in it to win it. You can see it when we play them in the midweek. It's going to be a grind on the weekends. I mean, I spent 3 years in that league, working at Winthrop. I know how hard it was to win week in and week out in that league. But that's what you want. Baseball players are all competitive to the 10th degree. And, I ultimately wanted to take our program to new places. That's what the goal was. I don't want to be a 30-win coach my whole life. We want to go do big things. And so to do that, you got to continue to move up the chain and challenge yourself. So pretty excited about those opportunities, obviously, for our kids more than anything, but for us as coaches and for our program.
That's awesome, man. You hit on several good things there. And for our listeners, it's really important to understand the quality of baseball.
Unreal. It's unreal.
In area in that conference. I mean, and then on top of playing a really tough conference schedule, you're going to be playing midweek against Greensboro. You're going to be playing midweek against Elon, Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
So the residual effect of just playing quality baseball on the weekends, quality baseball during the week, you're right. I mean, it is going to take the program to different levels, and it's going to bring on all new challenges. But, I think our listeners need to understand, the opportunity there is to play in North Carolina. I mean, now North Carolina A&T is going into the Big South. I mean, that's just another quality baseball program into another, quality conference. What are there? 18 Division I schools now in North Carolina?
Right.
And
you take stock of them, and I mean, everybody brings value to the table in the state. And I think that, I can't think of another state in the country, outside of, maybe a couple that bring that much depth to the baseball environment.
That's right.
That's amazing when you really think about it. There's a lot of states out there where the Power Five schools are obviously blue blood programs, and there's a couple decent mid majors, but then either there aren't any more options, or the options are, have never been real traditional baseball programs. But you can tell, this area committed to baseball a long time ago. And that's one thing I always talk about with kids out of the area who are looking to come into this area. So, this area of the country committed to college baseball a long time ago. And it makes for a really fun environment when, we can play the best teams in the country an hour and a half, 2 hours away on pretty much any week we want and get that challenge. Or if not, play them at home in the midweek, some of the better mid majors, and so, last year we were able to work out the opportunity to play NC State in our pro park here in Greensboro, and
Wow.
Unfortunately, the way the schedule went, we got shellacked that day, but we, the night before we played South Carolina and shut them out in their park. So we kind of knew that was a chance that would come, but just the opportunity of a program like ours to host a program of the history and level NC State's at, it's pretty cool,
Yeah, and then, you're exactly right. And then the visibility of playing all these, that's the other thing, and playing all these quality opponents, night in and night out is great for North Carolina A&T. It's just good for baseball in general, and you're right, brings an unbelievable atmosphere. So let's dive into the recruiting a little bit. We talked about walk-ons. We talked about 25% guys. You've always been a recruiting guy. That's where we spend a lot of our time together, on the road recruiting and talking about recruiting and hitting, of course. We'll dive into that later. But, what are you looking for in guys you're recruiting?
Well, I learned really early in this thing when I was working for Alan Osborne. I'll never forget, I was a young assistant, and I came back, and I was using all the jargon. I was like, he throws like this, his arm strength's this, I was grading everything out, and I'm getting all technical with my head coach. And he's like, Ben, stop. He's like, can the kid play? And I was like, well, his arm strength's like this, and he can throw like this, and he can hit, he's got bat speed, he's got all this. He's like, slammed his hand on the table, like, can the kid play? I'm like, yeah, he can play. He's like, all right, then let's get him. It was that simple, right? A lot of times recruiting isn't that simple, but it really boils down to it. Can you play? Can you help us win games? There is a gazillion different ways to do that in baseball. And we just want guys who can play at our level and above. That's what we're looking for. And, that comes in many, many, many different forms. For us, on the mound, it's throwing strikes, being able to execute pitch sequences, and, highly competitive, being able to respond from adversity and have an out pitch. In the box, it's, being able to put the barrel on the baseball consistently, be able to drive it in gaps and compete. And,
all right, hold on. Stop right there. Say that again. Put the barrel on the base.
Hit. We need guys that can hit,
guys that can hit.
We just want guys that can play the game, because unfortunately in college, the whole game is exposed to you. And that's something I think that kids, what holds up their development in college when they get to school in their freshman year, and what they, we saw it this year. We had a couple freshmen who are really good players. They're going to be really good players for us. But you could see the wheels just turning in inter squads in the fall, because there's so much getting thrown at them, and you try to prepare them for the fact when you go in and play Team X, and they're going to be X's and O's you in baseball to the 10th degree. You're going to be playing shortstop, and there's going to be two men on, and they're going to fake bunt / steal on you. How are you going to handle that? Right. And the kids say, what is that called? They never even heard of that. Right. Slash hit and run with two men on base. Right. All that stuff's in play, and you have to, whether it's going to happen that play or not, you have to understand the game enough to know what you're going to do before the play happens and be able to do it. And most kids don't know that until they get to our level. And that's why you spend so much time in practice in the off season, trying to prepare try to prepare what they do, but you got to try and prepare their eyes and their brain for the game of baseball, So, recruiting wise, we just, we're a competitive group of coaches, just like all of us are. You want kids that can take hard coaching, who can be motivated, but that also are fun to be around too. The only thing I'd say too in recruiting that I think is lacking right now, I miss the most is just like enjoyable communication. Man, it's like a lost art, and you see it when you're on the phone with guys, or like we're doing Zoom calls with kids, and and you get on your pulpit, you preach to them about the program and what we're doing and all this stuff, and there's never a two-way conversation a lot of times, and they just listen, and that's fine, that's good to take it all in, but we just got a commitment here recently from a young man, and the first thing I told Jamie on the phone, I was like, that kid is going to be enjoyable to be around. You could just tell the personality was there. He's funny. He cracked some jokes. He was comfortable on the Zoom call with us. He's going to be a bullpen arm here. Like he's going to fit that role because he's got some personality to what he does. That stuff is important in this process because as much as we compete with each other, we got to be around each other all the time too. And you got to enjoy the people you're around.
That's really good information right there. And, there's quite a few points to take out of that feedback. Just to sum it up, you really didn't talk about, guys on the mound, their velocity. You didn't talk about their spin rate. You said, we got to have guys that throw strikes. Now, we know, me and okay, and Coach Beard here, that you're not talking about guys that throw strikes that are throwing 75 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour. We're for our listeners, we're talking guys that are mid to upper 80s, have a chance to develop into low 90s. All right, but the first thing that you're not talking about is velocity. You're talking about they have to be able to throw strikes. It's the same as a hitter who has great bat speed and power, but he's a 5 o'clock hitter, which means
he strikes out every time.
He strikes out every time. And you go to the hitting that you talked about. You said consistency, being able to consistently put the barrel on the ball. You didn't talk about exit velocity or bat speed or any of that stuff. So, for the listeners out there, the importance of, being able to throw strikes, having an out pitch, being able to execute pitches in sequence, and then from a hitting perspective, being able to consistently put the barrel on the ball, drive the gaps. That's really what it takes to play at the next level. And that's where a lot of time has to be spent on developing that consistency.
Yeah.
Sometimes gets lost in the development process.
Well, it definitely gets lost. It's out there. It's definitely a hard time to be a coach at times because of that, different elements coming in the game. And it's all good. I mean, you all want to continue to learn and be better. But in my mind, man, the game in the essence hasn't changed since its inception. I mean, it really hasn't. Like, if guys get on base, you drive in runs, you score runs, you hit the ball hard, you have a high competitive nature. If our pitchers aren't soft and they compete with toughness on the mound and you play defense, you're going to win baseball games, and in the end, if we hit 240 as a team and win 50 games, I'm a good coach and we're all good players. It doesn't matter how many home runs we hit, right? I think UCLA won the national title one year and they hit like 240, right?
That's right.
There's so many different ways to be a winning program. I think that's probably been the biggest adjustment for me going from an assistant to a head coach. I don't care how it happens. Each year it's probably going to have to happen a little different anyways, because of the kids you got. So obviously I want to lead the conference and lead our group in every category we can, but are we winning games? And if we're winning games, then that's where we need to be. That's kind of where we need to fall. But I think at different levels, there's obviously different abilities. You're talking about the kid that throws 75. I mean, unfortunately, there might not be a level for that kid in baseball. It just is the way it is. That's not a knock or anything negative for him once he gets to our age group. But the kid that's on the verge and close, like you said, there's a place for you if you've got all those other aspects to you
Exactly.
And I try to tell kids and parents all the time too. You got to be willing to bring value in other places. That's tough. That takes a kid with some toughness and a family with a little bit of toughness to understand. Like, hey, Johnny might not be the best player on the team right now, but look what else he does for that group. And that's what keeps you in a good standing in a good place in that program, so that when you do click, you're right there ready to go. And I think that's such an important part to this process, because in the end you're a part of the team, and you have to do team things, whether we like them or not. And you really should enjoy that, because that's where all the success comes from anyways. Nobody dogpiles by themselves. Right. And
That's right, man.
Most of us play baseball because we didn't want to play an individual sport, right?
That's right.
And if you're somebody that is kind of reclusive and by themselves, I don't know, being around a bunch of baseball players might not be the best fit for you. That's how I see it. So
that's right. Oh man, this is good stuff. So let's move on. We've talked about, several different topics. But one thing that you and your staff have done a tremendous job of is just not recruiting, but developing players.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what you guys are doing to develop players at a high level.
Well, I mean, I'll be the first. And just throw them out on the field and win. But unfortunately that, doesn't work, or that's not really real. And everybody's got to develop. I think we were in a position we had to when I first got here. We didn't have a choice. And that's one of the main reasons when I hired Jamie Serber here was, I interviewed some pitching coaches, but I wanted somebody that would work with our worst pitcher, because at the time we didn't have enough time to bring a whole new pitching staff in. He was going to get what he had. And if he had brought a pitching coach ego into the thing, he would have just, complained about how bad the pitching was. And we were bad. I think we pitched at a 9 ERA that first year. But he worked with them. And some of those kids he worked with ended up being productive pitchers for us in 2017 when we made our turnaround. And so that low ego, that willingness to work with the worst player on your roster, so quote unquote, ended up paying off for us 2 years later. And, kids like, we had a kid named Kason Wilson who, he was a converted pitcher. He wasn't great, but he wanted to be good. And in his last year, his numbers weren't outstanding, but they were good enough to help us. And that was a huge, benefit to our program here. So, in the end, somebody, I think Dave Gallagher tweeted it out the other day. He's like, the true selfless coach is willing to work with every kid on the roster, regardless of their importance to the program. And when we're out recruiting and they sit in our office, I tell our kids, the kids that we're hoping to get here, is our goal as a coaching staff is to make sure your baseball experience here is outstanding, regardless of playing time. And that's not easy. It's a hard thing to accomplish, because you got certain people have to be involved with that to make that happen. But to me, if a kid if you're pouring into them, you're investing in them, you're giving them every opportunity to get better that you can, and you're kind of giving them your best shot, and they don't play, at least you've done that, and you've given them their best platform they could have. My thought process is I'm going to do that in the chance that 1% ends up helping you. And that's what we do. And it's proven, it's come to fruition for us. It'd take this whole podcast for me to talk about kids who, when they first got to school, you thought they'd never play for you. And then in the last 2 years, they were, all conference players and leading your team in hitting, or, just productive and starting in left field when you needed it. I mean, those are the fun stories about college baseball I still think are important.
Yeah, those are some of the most enjoyable moments right there.
The best.
That's what's so rewarding about the game is being able to take guys that are average or below average, and as long as they had the work ethic and commitment and they were coachable and really to develop them at a high level, there wasn't a better feeling in the world.
Yeah, and part of that comes from me. I mean, that was kind of my story. I bounced around. I ended up at Clemson. I was by no means the best player on that Clemson roster when I played there, but every one of those guys I played with would tell anybody to this day that I put enough work in for them to trust me to play. And when I did get opportunities, I came through, and I developed. I got better as a player there, and so there's a soft spot in my heart for those guys that come in kind of underappreciated, or maybe you're not expecting much out of them. And then you turn around 3 years later and go, wow, we look like geniuses with that kid. Look what he turned into.
That's right.
Those are the best stories.
That's awesome.
Coach, let me ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We're talking about player development and knowing you're a hitting guy. Talk about, and this may be coming out of left field a little bit, but talk about where the machine fits in your development process with hitters. How it's more than just the tee, front toss. One of the next things we're going to add to the facility, hopefully, is a hack attack, and our guys are getting more and more exposure to the machine and being challenged with velocity and things like that. Where does that fit into your development program?
Well, it fits in weekly. I mean, if not almost every day. A lot of times it depends on where you are as a group. I'm still a big believer in coaching your hitters as a group. I'll probably go to my grave on it, but it by no means means that we coach every hitter the same. But there are core things that are happening in the game that we need to do collectively, and that just is the way the game works. And so the tee, a lot of that stuff is, and for me, is continuous. It's routine based. It's core principle based. It's, hey, this is what we want on a daily basis from you to get yourself prepared. That could, again, that's routine. That might be an hour's worth for one kid. It might be 20 minutes worth for another. Some of those tee drills and build up drills, one of our older guys doesn't need like that much of. He don't want to spend that much time on a tee. But maybe a younger guy that's trying to make some adjustments needs more time to get ready to hit on the field. But what you're talking about is important, because at some point you got to simulate what's going to happen in a game. You have to. There's just it's like going in and playing football and not putting your pads on, and then actually not hitting in practice. If you never hit in practice, you're not going to be ready to get hit in a game. And so, we use the machine all the time. Our players don't like it usually until they get to the right place. But I think also the machine, some of what you're talking about is important too, because you almost need them to do really bad, because that in the end, it gets them to understand like how important every swing you take is. You don't just get out and hit mindless batting practice. One thing that I do here, and it's something that I've always believed in. I mean, our BP rounds are never the same, ever. They're always different. The first round or two might be the same, but something in there is different. Because I don't want it to become mindless to them. I want them to have to think like, oh, this is a different round. I got to do this today, or that might be a whole day where it's 100%. Every swing they take in practice is situational baseball, and that puts some ownership on the player to understand like, well, I want to hit some home runs today, right? Well, if you want to hit home runs, you need to come early to practice, because at practice we're going to work on the gameplay, situational at bats we need. That's fine. I want you to work on hitting home runs too, but we're not going to do it in team practice. You're going to do it prior, or in extra work. But it is an all-inclusive thing. You're not going to become a great hitter just hitting on a tee. You're not going to be a great hitter just hitting front toss. You're not going to be a great hitter just hitting on the machine. It all depends on where you are in approach, swing fundamentals, all the different things that are important to being a good hitter. You got to do it all. And so you just try to encompass it, incorporate it to your basically almost your weekly, day-to-day practice schedules as much as you can. And then the other important thing I will say is you got to be reactive as a coach too, or you can call it proactive. But if you start to see something in your group, you can't be afraid to throw it in to fix it the next day. I think a lot of times coaches, I can see it at a high school level where you got your best hitter on your team. You don't want to touch him. Like, man, I don't want to mess him up. He's hot right now. But maybe the last 4 games, they've been pitching in a certain way and he's been getting out. Like, well, like no better time than now. That's how I think. And so let's go ahead and get in there. Let's work on something. Let's get it fixed so it doesn't drag out another 6 games, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you need to change a swing, but it might be, hey, let's just adjust your setup a little bit. Let's back off the plate. They're coming in on you like crazy, because kids will do what feels good till the cows come home, and they'll keep doing it even despite failure. And I was a guy, I like to adjust, man. If I was getting thrown a ton off speed, I'd scoot up in the box. If I was getting pitched in, I'd back off the plate. That was just me. And so I think, you got to be willing to make adjustments, change it up on them, throw them curveballs, do all the different things you can do to challenge them, make it hard on them.
Awesome. Hey, one thing I'm really glad you hit on, you're talking about adjustments and tinkering, you're talking about extra reps on your own. One thing we're trying to really work hard on getting our guys to understand, particularly our older guys, is at a certain point, team practice isn't about reps as much anymore. It's not about,
That's a great point.
We're going to get you 100 swings a day. We're going to get your 75 ground balls and we're going to go home, right? That stuff at a certain point transitions to early work, as you're talking about, extra work, whenever it happens to be. Talk about kind of that line of this is what our team practice is going to be.
At our level, we're limited to the amount of hours we have.
Yeah.
So we're at our program, we're not going to sacrifice weight room. So, if we're lifting on a Tuesday, I may only have an hour and a half, 2 hours at most in practice. And, I can't sit there and work with Johnny for 20 minutes on getting the ball out of the air and hitting fly balls. Like, you're going to have to have done that prior to practice. And if you keep popping up, then you'll just lose swings. You didn't come early to practice. Oh, okay. You're out. Next guy in, right? Because we got 2 hours here and we need to get X, Y, and Z done. And we got to get to the weight room and get jacked. So if, guys have to learn, unfortunately, to play the game at a high level, it takes time and it takes reps. And like you said, reps aren't for team practice. They just aren't, because you got, in high school, you got 18, 20 kids, 25 kids at most. But, those guys all need team repetitions and team drills and different things like that. At our level, we got 16 hitters and 18 pitchers, and you got 2 hours to get them better as a team. So if they're not coming in early and getting in extra work, if they're not coming in early to get the individual attention sometimes that they really need, and we'll carve out time in practice. It happens, but a lot of times you just don't have the time. And they might only get 30 swings in practice, 40 swings.
Yeah.
That's not enough in a day. I think we all know that. Nobody could claim to be a great hitter on 30 swings in a day. So you need to get in and get your other 30, your other 100 that you need. And a good teaching point for kids. This is something I always say to make your coach happy. Come in early. Don't ask to stay late. That's why I always tell our guys, like, you want extra work, come in early, because these coaches got families. They all want to go home to their kids, but if you have to stay late, we'll make it work, but don't not come in early to stay late.
Right.
Because we're all balancing way more than the 16-year-old high school kid or the 20-year-old college kid, especially coaches that have families. So, but extra work, you're never going to get anywhere without it. And I mean, I try. We had some players here that would wake up and they'd hit in between classes. Those kids were all great hitters here. So
that's outstanding information. And you hit on something that, I've on several things there, but something that I really think these young players and parents listening really need to hear and get some more information on is you are not going to sacrifice the weight room. All right. And that's something we've talked about. You're just not going to develop at a high level if you are not developing in the weight room, your strength conditioning, your speed and agility. So hit on that a little bit and your philosophy and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we lift 4 days a week in the fall. And that doesn't get – the only time that might ever get changed is if we have like a, weather issues or something that's affecting practice, and we got to double down on how much time we need on the field. But we don't miss lift because, you know, the grind of a 56 game schedule is going to tear away at these guys' bodies. It's no different in the big leagues, man. Those guys play on a normal year 160 games. That's why they lift and go crazy in the weight room in the off season, because their body's going to get dwindled and torn away as the year goes. So it's a lot of baseball. So, you know, we spend a lot of time on it. Our strength coach is basically almost in every meeting we have. He's like just as important as any of our assistants are. He works hand in hand with our pitching coach probably more than anybody, because our pitchers add in a whole nother element of attention. But, you know, when we go in the spring, we lift 4 days a week. And then when we get into season, we still lift 3 days a week. And at worst, we'll lift twice on the worst weeks. We'll still get 2 lifts in. And that doesn't count what these kids are doing on their own. And so, you know, we've got a pitcher in our program that he's like a machine, man. He's got guys like Terminator. And for our 4 lifts a week, he's lifting on his own in the morning sometimes when he doesn't have class. Like, all thing I tell him is just check in with strength coach, make sure it's productive. It's not counterintuitive to what he's doing. As long as that, you know, fits, more power to you, you know. You know, so if you want to hit the ball over the fence, you're going to have to be strong. If you want to hit for power, if you want to throw harder, if you want to do all the things that you see on TV, it takes strength, power, explosiveness, conditioning, takes all that. You know, durability, health, arm health, strength is all involved with that. But it's not just, it's also, you know, we won't get into it that extensive. It's not just jumping in there and pushing as much weight as you can either. I mean, there's a science to it now.
Exactly.
That has definitely developed in the years that I've been involved in college baseball. But you can see the results now that you know, our strength coaches are getting out of our guys. But you know, playing sports is tough. It's a grind, and if you want to play at high levels, it's going to take a lot of you're going to have to make a commitment. It's like I know everybody's been watching the MJ stuff, and you know, you just think about everything you have to sacrifice if you want to be great. Most people don't want to sacrifice that much stuff. You know, it's tough to do.
Well, to go along with that narrative, I mean, you bring up MJ and what's, you know, that series, it's unbelievable. You know, Michael Jordan, he got tired of being pushed around by the Pistons.
Mm-hmm.
Right after the season, what did he do? He made the whole team commit to the weight room.
Right away.
Pushed around.
Yep.
We've got to be bigger. We got to be faster. We got to be stronger. It's no different in baseball. And you just hit on several good points. And
I think it really hit for me the year we went to our regional. Our program had not been in a regional since 2005. We are not used to winning, so this was all new territory for us. And our team was hot, but I don't think we were really mentally prepared for what we were walking into. And I know the kids didn't realize what they were walking into. So we were hitting after we lost Chapel Hill, didn't play real well. Our kids were fired up, frustrated we didn't play well. The next day we were hitting in the cages prior to playing Purdue. And I looked around and I was like, man, Purdue's guys are more physical than us. They're taller, longer, stronger, bigger, more physical. You know, our kids are physical. Don't get me wrong. They were pushing a ton of weight around, but you know, they kept rolling hitters into that cage that day. It was 6'2", 6'3", you know, 210, 220. And I'm like, man, I thought our guys were big and strong, you know, and for where we are, they are, but they're not that physical. So that goes back to recruiting. Let's get some longer, leaner. Let's get some longer hitters. Let's get some kids above 6 foot tall. You know, we want to hit doubles, home runs. You can't do it with a whole team of undersized players. It all comes into play, but physical strength, is definitely an equalizing factor for sure.
Very good.
Coach, I think one thing too that I'm glad you hit on is your guys are continuing to live 3 to 4 days a week in season. I think there's this misconception that lifting only takes place in the off season. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, your guys are year round. A lot of our athletes, we're obviously encouraging them to be multi-sport guys. They're playing football or basketball. And dude, if you only lift in the off season, that's only a couple months out of the year. Like it can't happen that way. So that continual process of, you know, and obviously your goals are different. It may be recovery, it may be injury prevention, but that it's constant.
There's
It's
something.
a process. That's right.
Yeah,
So,
and I'll be the first to say, it's hard to convince kids to want to play the game sore.
yeah.
That's right.
It is. It's tough because, oh, my legs are sore. We squatted yesterday. Good. Like, okay, so what? Like, do you think, those dudes in the big leagues aren't lifting? They might cut back on what they're doing, but they maintain some semblance of physical, exertion and pushing themselves throughout the year. I mean, you just have to.
Absolutely.
You don't lose 20 pounds of muscle over the course of 56 games because you're not eating as healthy as you might have been. You're eating irregularly. You're traveling more. Traveling takes a lot out of your body. You're not sleeping as much. You're getting done with games at midnight. So you have to continue to push, your body to develop. If you don't, you end up getting into that cycle where you make gains and then you lose, and then you gain back to where you were before, and then you lose again, and then you get back, and you never get progress any further. And so, that's how I think about it with our guys. I try to tell them, like, the baseball season isn't off season from lifting, or if it was, then you would lose basically 6 months of strength development in the course of a year. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Right on. Man, that is good stuff. Well, to wrap it up here, what's the outlook? We haven't talked about COVID-19, and
Yeah.
I know you're tired of talking about it. We were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. What's your outlook for the summer, recruiting wise, going into the season?
Yeah, I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, it's still there's so much misinformation out there too. I think a lot of people run off. That's one of the biggest issues in our country right now. I mean, it's like you watch one news outlet, they say one thing, you watch another, they say the opposite, right? Bottom line, like, you got to protect the health and wellness of the people that you're involved with. So, is it safe to go out and play baseball this summer? I don't know. Doesn't sound like it is to me, but that's my opinion just from watching and hearing, what people say on TV. So, when we get directives from the NCAA and from our conferences and what we're allowed to do, then we'll obviously do what we can. Obviously we're in a dead period right now. We don't know what's going to happen with that. Is it going to get extended? We're waiting to hear, obviously. We're still recruiting on the phone, at least in some forms. There's not much we can do because we haven't watched baseball since February, right? So the things that I'm trying to tell some kids out there is, you can tell we're starting to get, like, the emails are starting to flood in wanting interest. It's hard for us to give interest when we haven't seen you play. And that's the tough thing about this whole thing. And I feel for the high school kids. The 21 class, I think, is potentially going to get hurt by this a little bit just because, we can't get out and watch you play. Just realize that and be patient. That's what I'm telling our kids. That they all want to go play summer ball like today, and you're like, well, I don't think we can do that. That's just not where we are right now. Just be patient. Like, do what you can where you are at the moment you're in. It's not going to be like this forever. You think about it in the full length of your life. This is going to be like a snapshot in our lives here, hopefully. Just got to be safe and do what you can. We're going to survive. Yeah, not having baseball right now stinks, but, like, nobody's going to keel over and die from not watching a baseball game, right? So we're playing baseball. It's a huge inconvenience as far as the game goes right now. Need to basically just do what people who are a lot smarter than us, who are scientists, tell you is the smartest thing to do, and adjust accordingly and be ready to go when we're allowed to go. That's what I told our guys. Y'all need to make good grades. You need to be prepared if we come back full go in the fall, which that's the plan. That's what we're hearing, unless something different happens, that you're ready to go. If you take these 3 months and just sit on your rear end, you're not going to be ready when it's time. But just keep your head up. Don't be negative about it. I'll try to tell these kids to be positive and, get through it. We'll be all right.
Coach Ben Hall, head coach, North Carolina A&T University. Can't thank you enough for your time. Insightful, great perspective, very informative. A ton of great information here for our listeners. So we can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Excited you guys are doing this. And if there's a time you want to have me on again, if you want to do a group thing, let me know. I'll be down to talk some ball.
Awesome, man. Can't wait to have you down at Athletes Lab. We'll see you soon.
Good to meet you, Cameron. See
Thanks,
you guys.
Coach. Appreciate you coming on.